unauthorized visitor, they call it. Rick has let into the museum. And they say, they posed the question when they released this tape last year in August 2015. Was this a dry run for the theft? Did he and Rick come up with a scheme the night before? I never bought that. Why, if he and I are gonna, if he's the thief and I'm Rick, are we gonna conspire at the museum the night before? Come on, we'll go to a bar, we'll go to a corner, we'll go to a house and conspire. We're not gonna conspire at the museum. And after 2 days, 3 days later, the Globe got a call, they referred to me, from a woman who had been a security officer at the museum, and she says, that's not an unauthorized stranger. That's Larry O'Brien. He was a deputy, he passed away, but he was the deputy security supervisor. And he had come back to the museum to get his wallet. He had left his wallet at the museum, and he came back to pick it up. So I said, oh, Jesus, that's a hell of a story. The feds are saying this is a dry run, and I know it's not a dry run, it's really Larry O'Brien. I know, but I know Larry's dead. Let me go to Larry's bachelor brother, they lived together in Somerville. I went to David. David, in all senses, 80 years old. David, that's Larry, right? Jesus, Steve, I cannot tell you that's Larry. He says, it's got to be Larry. It's got to be. He says, no, I think that's a little bit too young. Or his hair is not like Larry's. Then I said, well, this is the car he drove up in. This fellow got out of this car to go into the museum the night before the robbery. He says, yeah, that's Larry's car. Oh, God. All I can do is write it up. So it's just part of the mystery. But I do think that Abbott, who lives in Brattleboro, shows no signs of wealth and lives, you know, a sedate life, 2 sons, teacher's aide in a local elementary school. You know, I still think there's a secret in him. When they showed him this tape with this guy in it, they said, Rick, who is this guy? You let him in the night before. Rick says, hey, it's 25 years later. How do I recognize him? And I had to, I do think the Fed should have been looking at this long before.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you mean 25 years later?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. The Feds have held on to this case. They should have years ago shared it with the Boston police and the state police. They know the ground level sources. But the Feds thought that this was an easy fix. It hadn't left town. We were going to find it. And I just, as the years went by, it became more and more frustrating.
When you spoke to Jeff, did he have anything to say about the pit and the storage?
Yeah, he said there were motors, M-O-T-O-R-S, and they were ruined in the flood. That was motors.
Like engines?
Yeah, like engines. That's it. Then he
get underneath.
Yeah. He would have had. He could have said it was the bank robber stuff. He's never going to tell me the truth. Yeah. You know, never going to say. He's not going to implicate himself in the crime. Yeah. But whether or not he is implicated in this crime, my friend.
Why do you think the FBI, after having already searched Gentiles property twice,
Good question.
went back 2 weeks ago and did it again?
Yeah, I think they probably got a tip from someone who knows Bobby and said that, or Bobby said something in jail to someone that gave the feds a belief. Because they looked in the empty, unused oil tank that Bobby used. He's since gone, in ensuing years, he has gone to gas heat. But they opened that up, opened the top of it, and looked into this empty tank. What? But that they thought that Bobby would have hidden stuff in there? If Bobby was digging to get access to the tank to hide stuff in there, he lives in a suburban neighborhood, it would have been seen. If, say, he did it 10 years ago. That never made sense, but that's the best I can come up with. They looked in there, they found guns, Didn't find anything more suspicious about the Gardner case, but they found guys, and they found what they said was a piece of wood. They took a piece of wood. I asked the Gardner security director in the past, I said, was there a piece of frame missing? He said, no, not that I know of. But who knows? Who knows?
It seems to me, though, that the thieves must have been aware of, where all these paintings were.
Exactly. They had to have.
Because they went right to them.
Yeah, right.
So they had to have gone to the museum a number of times to know exactly where they were.
Yeah, they didn't take just any stuff off the top. They had to have some advice as to what to take.
And where they all were.
And where they were inside the museum.
Yeah.
But any schoolgirl is going to know Rembrandt, whether they know Vermeer or something else. But I think that they would have probably got some advice from someone. But what I found, I never did organized crime before I did my reporting here. I never specialized in it. But what I found is how aggressive they are in their they're keeping their eyes open on what do they call schoolers? Either a museum, not so much a museum, but a diamond, a jewelry store, an unprotected card game or a drug operator, a restaurant that brings its unprotected proceeds. They got their eyes out all the time. My sense is that they got some piece of information about the security system, the minimal degree of the security system, and by just sitting down, whether it was Rick or any of the other two dozen or so guards, and just bought an extra beer for them and said, hey, I understand you work for the government. Boy, I love that museum. That's a fabulous museum, Tell me about, geez, do you get scared at night? Is there security? What do you have for security?
Yeah. And what about the two that did the actual robbery? They weren't any part of where the paintings ended up. These were just...
I think I think that they did steal them and then stash them. There's others who believe they called Whitey Bulger. Could they have gotten out of the country? And a year after the theft in '91, they called Bulger's handler for the FBI. Remember, Bulger had a arm-in-arm relationship with the FBI, and his handler was a guy named John Conley. John Conley went to jail, still in jail in Miami, and I contacted him, and I said, so where does Bulger come into the story? Bulger was our most notorious criminal in Boston, and he said, well, the feds reached out to me after I retired in '91. Early '91, the feds reached out to me and they said, get Bulger on the case. He will know who stole this. He's the criminal mastermind of Boston. They know everything. Get Bulger on the case. So he said, I called Bulger and I said, Jimmy, what can you tell us? What can you tell about the theft? Who has the paintings? If you can help us get them back, you'll become Prince of the City. And there's, at that time, $1 million reward. And Bulger said to him, don't you think I've already gone searching for these paintings? He said, why, for the $1 million? He says, no, not for the $1 million. He said, for the tribute that wasn't paid to me. I don't know who did this. And when they pull off a theft this big on my domain, I go looking for who did it, because I want my tribute. I want my tithe. So he said, I sent my two underlings, Stevie Fleming and Kevin Weeks out there. Fleming came back and said they already left the country. They left the country the next day. They went to Saudi Arabia. Since they're in Saudi Arabia, some Saudi prince. I don't know who. That doesn't help. So I sent Kevin Weeks out there. And Kevin came back and said, as helpful, they were with some guy named Sullivan in South Boston. that pins it down. You got 1 trillion grains of sand that may be under in Saudi Arabia. You got 10 trillion Sullivans who are in South Boston. So that doesn't help much. So I thought, long time, that Whitey could hold the key. But it never came up. When Whitey was caught in 2013, he went to trial, convicted, now sentenced to 85 years, that he'd pull the rabbit out of his hat. But his lawyer said, I talked to his lawyer, said it never came up. And I don't think he knows anything about it. So the mystery continues.
You know Kevin Cullen from the Globe.
Very well.
Does he have a theory? Has he worked on this?
He may have worked it for the Herald, but no, he hasn't espoused the theory. The way it works, this is quote my case, so if he has something, he'll come to me, or he'll bulge me in his. If I have something, he works with a woman named Shelley Murphy, who's legendary in the Globe. And when I learned that Whitey had had a baby, or he had married, he had been with a woman, and she had a baby, and the baby had died, I went to Whitey, I went to Shelley, we did this work. I'm not sure Kevin has it. Last question, if I can. I gotta get back to Boston.
The motive, I mean, you know, in some cases, we know that somebody just wants to bury a great painting
Yes.
in their basement
Right.
and just look at it and be
Right.
privy to it
Right.
themselves.
Right,
You know, but the motive here, I mean, if something is buried,
right.
I mean,
But they're
what
dead.
initiated this, and it seemed like such a hack crime
Yeah,
for
yeah.
fine art.
Brutal. Brutal. That's why I don't think it was done to sell. If it was done for appreciation, they really did a damage on it. There's one piece that they treated with kids' gloves, and that's this piece. Here. Yeah. This is a finial, top of a flagpole, and they stole that. The reason why they stole it is they were looking at this. This is a Napoleonic banner. It's in the, I don't have a full picture of it, but it's in a frame about this size, okay? And it's held together with 8 tiny screws, 2, 4, 6, 8 tiny screws. They worked diligently. They probably worked harder to get those screws out than to get any of the masterpieces. They only could get 6 of the screws out. They couldn't get the other 2, so they gave up on it. Interesting though, they didn't break the glass front and rip the Napoleonic banner out of its frame. My sense is that if they saw it and they had been told, I love that Napoleonic banner, get that banner, they didn't want to damage it in getting it. And they didn't. But they took this finial. And they didn't realize it was gone until the day the museum closed for Sunday of the theft, and Monday they had to do crime scene. But by midweek they opened it, the museum. Just before they opened it, they were in this, this is in the short gallery, and they were vacuuming the floor, and all of a sudden they click, click, click. The vacuum picked up the loose screws. They looked, they said, what are these screws from? And they looked at this frame and they see the 6 screws are out of the frame. So, and then, my Jesus, the finial is gone. That's how they figured that this, now, wisely, the museum has offered $100,000 just to get this back. Why I say wisely is because, you know, if I ask you guys, what did that Van A look like? It was, I think there was one guy, was he wearing a hair or not? We're going to forget. But you're not going to forget that. And so they put that offer out there last year. They haven't got it back. If they've gotten tips, good, but they haven't got it back. Well, I got my book for sale. It's got a lot of, most of this in it, and a lot of Boston characters. And I hope it's rich with the stories that I was told tonight. And I thank you very much for coming.